2007 Honda Civic transmission mount's broken. I'm Brian Essex from How to Automotive, and I'm going to show you how to replace that. So the transmission mount's right here next to the air cleaner on the driver's side. So we are going to be removing this air box here. But before we get started, I wanted to show you the part numbers here. This is the genuine Honda part number for the 2007 Honda Civic. And I definitely recommend using factory parts on engine mounts anyways. I've used aftermarket parts and not had very much luck, or they vibrate and they don't last as long. So definitely recommend that you get a quality factory mount for it. And this is what the transmission mount looks like. So we're going to start by getting the air cleaner out. So we're going to go ahead and pop the clips off. Go ahead and unplug your mass airflow sensor and take the top of the box out. Actually, you can leave the mass air plugged in and just kind of flip this out of the way. Now you can take your filter out, and you can go ahead and take out the 10mm here. And it looks like there was supposed to be a 10mm back here, but just behind the brake master cylinder, but it's missing on mine, so I'll have to find them a bolt. Also got to pop this little air duct coming in out. You'll also take off the hose clamp here and the squeeze clamp here and pop the line off. So once I got all the clamps off, I kind of rotated the air cleaner box to the right, clockwise a little bit, and then I was able to. The next thing we need to do is remove the PCM, which is underneath this plastic cover. So you can pull the plastic cover up if you like. And then there's a 10mm bolt here, here, and a little below. There's another one. And once you get it, you're going to leave it plugged in, and you're going to kind of just maneuver it into this area over here. To gain more access to the get to the bolts, I'm just going to loosen up the battery hold down a little bit and kind of just lift the battery up a little bit and slide it over to the left towards the passenger side just a little bit, just to give me a little bit more room. That way I can use my air ratchets and stuff to take these out. Now that the PCM is unbolted, I'm just going to leave it connected, and then I'm going to, right here, box, there's these little tabs. I'm going to squeeze the little tab and lift it up here, and there's going to be a couple more in the back, so you'll squeeze those tabs and lift it up, and we're going to leave everything connected, and we're just going to kind of float this stuff around and maneuver it. And what we're trying to do is get to these brackets that are underneath here and just create enough room to where we can lift the motor mount out of the car, or the transmission. Now that you got this all loose, before we start taking off brackets, we're going to take a floor jack of wood like so, and we're going to slide it under the car here, and we're going to put it right on the transmission right there, and we're going to jack the transmission up a 1/4 inch or so. And to get the jack under there, you may have to jack up the side of the car. I'm using my hoist just to lift it up an inch or two. That way I can slide the floor jack in underneath. So after working with it, I decided it would be safer for me to actually unplug the PCM. At least unplug the one in connector here, and then I can fully swing that completely out of my way. To unplug it, right here is a little tab you push downwards, and then you flip this little door backward, and that unplugs the PCM. Now you can lift it and move it out of our way like that. So now what we need to do, now that we got the fuse box maneuverable, we need to remove this 10mm bolt bolt here that holds the bracket that held the PCM on. And then after that, there's going to be a 14mm here, and somebody's already taken this one out and is missing. So you're going to take the 14mm bracket out there, and also you're going to take the 14mm bolt here, and the top part of the bracket will come off. And by now you should have your transmission jacked up. So once you get this little bracket off here, and then the black bracket underneath off, then underneath that is there's a 17mm bolt here, and on the opposite side there's going to be another 17mm bolt, and you'll get to it with a long extension through the top. And then you're going to take off these 3 17mm bolts here. Then the whole mount should maneuver out. Mount here. Once you get that bolt out, you can kind of just maneuver it out of your way, or if it's bothering you, there's another 10 up here by the fender well on the inside of the fender that you can take off and loosen up. But I'm just going to kind of just maneuver it out of my way. And one thing you'll come across as an automotive technician is you'll find people that left bolts out and stuff like that. And my advice to you is to when you go to put this back together, is scrounge up a bolt, put it in there. That bolt was there for a reason, and always trying to leave these cars better than the way you found them, and you always come out on top as an automotive technician. So after removing all the bolts, the ones down here by the master cylinder, and I just used a long extension with an impact gun and got all 5 of the main bolts here for the motor mount. And then once I got those loose, I took the fuse box and I was able to route it, kind of tuck the wire in here and route it through. And now you can lift the whole mount assembly out like that. So when we put our mount back in, this part doesn't come with the new mount, so you gotta make sure you transfer this over. It's kind of like a counterbalancer or something. You'll put this in pretty much exactly the way you pulled the other one out, and then what I like to do is start all the bolts by hand, at least all the main bolts. So this bolt here, and these 3, we go here, start them all by hand, and once I got them all started by hand, then you can go ahead and tighten these bolts down. And then, so once you get the new motor mount back in there, if you look at the original bolts, they had Loctite on it. You can see that the blueness. So what that is like a little glue that you would put on the thread. So I would recommend getting Permanex or Loctite brand thread sealer, and put that a little dab on each one of the bolts and nuts, and that helps prevent these bolts from vibrating loose, because the engine mounts especially have a lot of vibrations on them, and that can actually cause the bolts to vibrate loose and come back out. So put that little glue on there, and that helps prevent that happening. And then I wanted to point out or show you these are the mounting bolts and torque specs for the transmission mount. So I'll show you those here. And this information is courtesy of All Data. So you go ahead and tighten all these nuts and bolts down to these specs. Now that you got all those bolts tight, you can go ahead and lower your jack down there. You won't need that anymore. And now you can go ahead and reinstall the mount here. So I went to start this bolt, this bracket here, and as you can see, they don't line up. So what I'm going to do to compensate for to see if I can get everything to line up is I'm actually going to loosen the 2 big bolts here. I'm going to loosen those up, and I'll use my floor jack actually here to jack the engine up and down, left and right, and that should give me enough maneuverability to start the bolts. And then once I got them started, I'll run them all down kind of equally, and then I'll torque them down to those specs I showed you earlier on the paper. So now that mount is this bracket is remounted, and all the bolts are retorqued back down, go ahead and install the bracket here. And then you can, after you get that bracket installed, you can go ahead and put your fuse box back into the little clips that it mounts onto. So I'm suspecting the reason why I was missing that 1 bolt when I was taking this apart is whoever did the motor mount last, or transmission mount last, they couldn't get that to line up, so they only lined up the 2 that they could get, and they purposely left that bolt out. So now that the fuse box is remounted, you can go ahead and swing your PCM back in and go ahead and plug the connector in. So you want to plug it in, and you want to swing this connector in until it locks. You'll hear it click into place. Also might want to give it a little tug and just make sure that it's really connected really well. You don't want any loose connection problems on the PCM. That'll give you drivability issues. So once you get that on, now you can go ahead and put your 3 mounting screws back on and mount the PCM back to the bracket. And then you can put the plastic cover that went on it, slide it back over. Now that that's re-secured, if you moved your battery like I did, go ahead and remount that, and remount your battery mount bolt. Now you can go ahead and reinstall your lower half of your airbox. So kind of just rotate it in there, and you'll kind of twist it in there, and then start all your hoses and clamps and tighten those all down. And then your bolt here and here on the corner. The lower box is mounted, and I'll reconnect it. You can go ahead and install the top part of your air cleaner. Just stab it in like that. Put your clips up. And once you get that done, that completes the transmission mount installation on a 2007 Honda Civic. I'm Brian Esser from How to Automotive, and I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos and encourage you to subscribe for more valuable videos like this. Thank you again.